Europe's ground power is waking up, not in fancy videos or leaflets, but on factory floors. Barrel forges are hot, turret lines are running nights and weekends, and order books look like the Cold War all over again. Last week we walked through European defense stocks and how the White House's rhetoric and the outright blackmail in withholding systems from Ukraine are already chilling demand for some US military technology and turbocharging European companies. Many of you expressed that you'd wish for us to expand to other systems in a more detailed way, and as always, your wish is our command. This episode will be on land systems, and then we'll follow up with air, naval, and logistical elements in the coming weeks. For the other episodes in the series, you'll find the links in the comments and description. Let's start at the heavy end. In the tank department, Leopard 2A8 is where momentum sits in Europe right now. Fresh orders, common training, common spares, and production spread across several different European countries, from Norway to Germany and Lithuania. And while it isn't the only main battle tank in European production, it's by far the one with the most new orders. Since Russia's full-scale invasion, Germany has first backfilled with 18 Leopard 2A8s and then moved to 105 more to equip the brigade in Lithuania, with deliveries running into 2027 to 2030. Norway signed for 54 Leopard 2A7 co-produced locally. The Czech Republic, like Sweden and Lithuania, has approved 44 of the newest variant, and the Netherlands have ordered 46. Taken together, that's a clear center of gravity around Leopard in Europe's heavy armor. KNDS, the company which produces the Leopard, a conglomeration between German Krauss-Maffei-Wegmann plus French Nexter Systems, closed last year with a record order book across tanks and artillery. Their current backlog sits at around €23.5 billion, up more than 15% from the following year. France is modernizing its Leclerc main battle tank under the Scorpion program to the XLR standard, new software, drone integration, active protection, and crew survivability upgrades. The French procurement agency ordered an additional 100 renovations at the end of 2024, confirming a total program of 200 upgraded tanks. Deliveries are underway. By December 2024, the Army had accepted 21 renovated tanks that year, with a prototype handed over previously to qualify the design. It's a rolling, budget-anchored upgrade plan that keeps France's heavy armor relevant into the 2030s, while the much-anticipated future French-German tank project creeps along in the background. As mentioned earlier, the Leclerc is being upgraded by Nexter, who is part of KNDS, so we won't go further into the financial situation on this one. Let's talk about the British path. Challenger 3 isn't a clean-sheet tank like the Leopard 2A8, it's a deep rebuild of Challenger 2 done by a Rheinmetall and BAE joint venture. London signed an $800 million contract in 2021 to upgrade 148 vehicles. The plan is to field the first tanks around 2027 and complete deliveries toward 2030. That timeline matches what the Army and industry have been signaling for a while: prototypes through mid-decade, then a steady ramp to an all-digital fleet with a new gun, active protection, sights, armor, and electronics backbone. As we discussed in our previous episode, both Rheinmetall and BAE's stock values have increased significantly on the back of the renewed interest in their platforms since the US election, with Rheinmetall increasing a staggering 230% at the making of this episode, and BAE going up over 40% in the same space. Lastly, before we compare the outlook against the US alternative, the two newest contenders in the European tank space. Rheinmetall's KF-51 Panther is likely the biggest export competition for the Leopard 2, and Italy, Hungary, and Ukraine have all signed contracts to produce it locally. Italy's Leonardo have, like the British Challenger 3 program, signed a cooperation agreement with Rheinmetall to produce 280 Panthers in Italy, along with 1,000 Lynx IFVs. Hungary has followed a similar route, but it is unclear when they'll start production. I expect that politics are involved here, and things might be held back until Hungary decides if it wants to be a Russian puppet or a European nation. Ukraine, for its part, is expected to produce 400 Panthers per year when production starts up later this year. Poland's South Korean licensed K2 Black Panther is the last European-produced tank we'll cover. Poland has already taken delivery of 180 South Korean variants and is expected to start production of at least 820 domestic Black Panthers in 2026. When we compare the European tank makers to the producers of the Abrams, the picture isn't as stark as with Lockheed, but the gap is still there. General Dynamics, the company behind the Abrams, is up about 9% since the US election. And according to the company, a lot of that growth comes from the purchases of weapons from their European sub-companies like the Ascod and Ajax. For the market changes, we've covered Rheinmetall before, but Italy's Leonardo has seen an increase of 98% since the US election. And PGZ, the Polish producer of the K2, is not publicly traded. However, they've reported a 37% revenue increase from 2022 to 23, and is expected to grow further when they release their updated figures this year. All in all, European tanks and their producers are showing incredible growth and order backlogs. And before you tell me in the comments that I forgot Hägglunds, who is currently upgrading the Swedish Leopard 2 variant, I'll get back to them in the infantry fighting vehicle section. As for infantry fighting vehicles, they've really proven their worth in Ukraine. The combination of speed, anti-tank and infantry abilities likely means that they have become the most important armor on the field in modern warfare. The CV90 has become Europe's go-to tracked infantry fighting vehicle. National buys and replenishment orders are locking in years of work at Hägglunds, while a growing user club keeps training, spares and upgrades common across borders. Other European contenders are still in service or seeing nice growth. Germany's Puma and Lynx, the British-made Ajax, Spain's Ascod, and France's VBCI. But the big winner right now is the CV90 because it brings multi-nation commonality and pulls local industry in across many European countries. Production is centered in Sweden, with factories underway in the Netherlands, and there's active planning to scale up capacity in the Czech Republic and Ukraine. On the business side, publicly announced CV90 contracts since 2023 add up to roughly 7 billion euros, giving BAE a clear multi-year runway, one of the key engines behind the company's growth. Considering that most producers of infantry fighting vehicles were already mentioned in the tank part, let's move on to other armored vehicles. In the armored personnel carrier market, there's really only 3 families of vehicles doing the job in Western armies at the moment. One based on American-owned General Dynamics variants, Striker, Piranha, Pandur, and the older Spanish BMR. France's Griffon or VAB family, made by KNDS, Patria with its growing export market and licensing deals with Poland, South Africa, and Japan, and Artex Boxer, a mainstay in the German, British, and Dutch armed forces. The Patria AMV has become Europe's most popular APC. Strong protection, the largest export volume, and a long record of license builds. Poland's Rosomak is the locally built version. It anchors the wheeled combat fleet and keeps a national production base warm through multiple upgrade waves. The Rosomak has done a quite frankly incredible job in Ukraine and has been destroyed at much lower rates than the Striker. While it isn't a publicly traded company, the order volumes speak for themselves. Poland leads the pack with nearly 1,000 Rosomak vehicles already built and a fresh 100 ordered for Ukraine, using the same Polish production line. South Africa signed on for 238 vehicles, though full-rate production has been delayed and is expected to ramp up soon. Over in Asia, Japan has committed to around 140 vehicles, with local assembly set to begin in late 2025 through Japan Steelworks. And while the 8x8 line continues to expand, the newer 6x6 variant under the CAVS program is rapidly becoming the standard light APC for Europe, with over 800 vehicles ordered, 200 delivered, and Denmark recently joining the program with 130 vehicles of their own. Now, I could probably go on speaking about armor for a while, but I get that not everyone wants to hear about this for hours on end, so I'll leave other variants for another day and switch gears to what has become the premier weaponry on the modern battlefield: drones. As we discussed in our initial video on this subject 6 months back, Europe has an absolute ton of companies working on drones, both to deliver to Ukraine to help in the effort against Russia, but also to develop their own defensive and offensive capabilities against this new type of warfare. It is likely the most vibrant drone scene in the world, and if you include Ukraine's extensive programs in this overview, no other continent offers the same sort of unique battle-tested capability which we now see in Europe. There's a whole boatload of different drone types I could be speaking on here, but I'll try to focus on some variants per category, in particular ones with a proven track record in Ukraine, and their company's market performance. It likely needs a whole episode in its own right, so if there's a want for that, let me know in the comments, and we'll work on that in the future. Europe's surveillance drone space is getting extremely serious. Only a few years ago, the only systems in use in Europe were generally American systems like the Puma. German Quantum Systems is now a flagship coming from essentially nothing as little as 10 years ago. Its vector mid-range fixed-wing surveillance drone has clocked hundreds of thousands of mission hours in Ukraine, and it's doing everything it can to increase production. Portuguese Tekever is also emerging fast, especially in AI-enabled maritime and land surveillance. It's profitable, its drones are in frontline use in Ukraine, and it just secured new funding at more than €1 billion to become the British Army's mainstay drone producer. Another key player gaining altitude in Europe's drone space is Skywatch from Denmark. The flagship of their military lineup is the RQ-35 Hydron, a fixed-wing mini-UAS proven in combat and trusted by Ukrainian forces since 2022. The Hydron delivers real-time video, is resilient against electronic warfare and jamming, operates with up to 150 minutes of flight time, and easily deploys from troopers in the field. Demonstrated in missions across Ukraine and NATO training grounds, it's become a go-to organic ISR asset where soldiers need eyes near the front. In the loitering drone department, meaning drones which stay in the air and are guided to targets using AI and remote controls, Europe outside of Ukraine has one massive champion, Polish Warmate, made by WB Group. The Warmate's combat headline and track record is real. Poland's defense agency signed a 10,000-unit framework agreement through 2035, creating a multi-year production ramp for the drone. Ukraine has already fielded thousands of Warmates with battlefield success, and there's a 20-kilogram warhead variant in development, Warmate 50, aimed at hardened targets, showing the platform's evolution, and the Poles are working closely with Ukrainian companies to improve this further. I could go on and talk about more European companies and their drone projects, but instead of highlighting the next shiny concept, let's dive into something even more powerful. Meet the real drone masters. Ukraine, forget high-speed stock charts and tech launches. This is where warfare is being reshaped. At the start of the war, Ukrainian forces had a few hundred drones, many imported. Fast forward to early 2025, and 500 drone makers are operating at home. Output surged from roughly 20,000 FPV drones per month to 200,000 per month, and they're on track for 4 million units annually. That's one of the fastest industrial ramps in history, probably only matched by the British and American war industries of World War II. That's just the baseline. Ukraine is also scaling long-range strike systems like the FP-1 Deep Strike drone, now building over 100 units per day, deep into Russian rear areas, rapidly creating a gasoline shortage in Russia. At the same time, loitering systems like the AQ-400 Scythe are ramping to 500 per month, each capable of flying 750 kilometers on plywood wings and hitting major multi-million targets for as little as a few €1,000 apiece. Many of the companies mentioned in our drone segment aren't publicly traded yet, but we can still glean a lot from their financials, and the picture is overwhelmingly positive. Tekever recently crossed a $1 billion valuation, remains profitable, and is expanding with major UK investments. Skywatch, while not listed on a major exchange, turned a loss in 2021 into a large profit in every year since, clear proof of operational momentum. WB Group, maker of the Warmate loitering munition, is growing even faster. Between 2019 and 2022, the company posted a compound annual growth rate of over 200%, climbing from $86 million to $151 million in annual revenue. while securing a 10,000-unit drone deal with Poland. And Quantum Systems, arguably Europe's biggest drone breakout, doubled revenue year over year, reached 115 million in 2024, and closed a 160 million euro funding round that pushed its valuation well past 1 billion. Publicly traded or not, these are the growth metrics of a sector hitting rapid increases at the cost of the US losing customers their drones used to have. Europe's land game is no longer just about rebuilding, it's about outpacing. Leopard 2s, CV90s, Rosomaks, and equipment of all kinds are now rolling off production lines at a scale and pace that would have seemed absurd just a few years ago before the Ukraine war. Drones, once a side project mainly owned by US companies, are now a full-spectrum European and Ukrainian industry, from FPVs to deep-strike loitering munitions. And while Europe's defense giants are seeing stock valuations explode, some of the most important names aren't even publicly traded yet, but still report revenue jumps, billion-euro backlogs, and cross-border demand. And we've only just started. If this week was about boots, treads, and drones, then next week we take to the skies. We'll break down the air domain, fighters, bombers, surveillance, logistical aircraft, and what Europe is building to replace or challenge American air power. A wonderful weekend to you all.